Hi, my name's Frank. I am a partner at the SparkLabs group and also co-founder of a cool new climate investment firm called BraveNewDAO. And we're going to be talking about sports. We're going to be talking about Web3, and we have a illustrious panel here of some of the smartest minds in sports. Over to you, Alex.
Hi, my name is Alex. I'm also a venture partner at SparkLabs, but my day job is a founding team member and business officer at Next.
Matt Fisher. I created the first cameras for the Apple Watch called Wristcam, bringing vision to the platform. It's been about a 6.5-year journey of getting it to market. My day job, my nighttime job, my weekend job is all focused on building a brand new behavior into the world.
Mitchell Chun, founder and CEO of Bloksports. We are a decentralized social sports betting platform. I'll get into the specifics of exactly how we're configured, but we are in a live beta currently and planning to roll out commercially over the coming weeks, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, what decentralized sports betting means exactly.
Great. Okay, so let's kick off. So I want to firstly just you guys give a little bit more description, especially you, Alex, who was way too short there, man. Dude, like, yeah, after, these guys got straight into it. Yeah.
Next, we are a motion sports and entertainment company. Our technology is mostly focused on computer vision. So we focus on teaching your camera through AI to understand what it sees. And so the first product we launched using that technology was a basketball AI training app called HomeCourt. Long story short, we basically use your camera on your phone to track your basketball shots and create augmented reality, computer vision enabled kind of training and fitness experiences on that. And more recently, this year, we've kind of expanded our coverage for our technology to also go into gaming and entertainment. And so we've launched a lot of different types of motion AR related games on mobile and PC that basically uses your camera to detect your body and create experiences from that. A few different apps: Active Arcade, Party Foul, which is like a party game that you can play with your friends. Starry, which is kind of like a computer vision Beat Saber, if you played Beat Saber on VR before. Our mission as a company is to reconnect humanity with the joy of movement, and a lot of our apps basically do just that.
Fantastic. Thanks, man. Yeah. Much better. Okay. So Mitchell, just let's start with you. So what's the innovation? How's sport going to look in 2023, 2024? Because it seems to be changing really rapidly now as it gets more digital, gets more innovative. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots happening. I'm actually based in Los Angeles, and there is just a flood of innovation and activity happening in the sports betting space because up until 2018, there was a federal ban on sports betting in the States, with the exception of a couple of territories. The ban was repealed in 2018, floodgates, investment started happening, a ton of activities been happening. What's most exciting to me is that, and actually a year ago I predicted that 2022 would be the year of decentralized sports betting exchanges. And just in the last 12 months, there have been a number of companies and protocols established, funded, that are in build mode currently. What I'm looking forward to in 2023 is the commercialization of those protocols in the sports betting space. I think there's going to be a sea change of activity in the sports betting market, and I think peer-to-peer is going to be something that's going to, I think it's going to be a tidal wave of new activity.
Peer-to-peer betting.
Peer-to-peer, yeah.
How does that work?
On blockchain. So we are blockchain-based, and decentralization basically means that we enable our community of global users to connect and wager with one another without any sort of middleman involved, right? There's no house. The house is another name for the centralized sports book. And because there's no house, we believe we offer a much more of a trusted, secure, transparent experience for our users. Because there's no house margin, which is called the VIG. This is how the sports books make their money. That's eliminated in our platform. And as a result, the expected economic value to our users is far greater than the traditional sports betting experience.
Interesting. Interesting. So, and does it? And you think it's going to shift more and more into this space, like especially from a blockchain perspective, Web3?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we're necessarily going to cannibalize the traditional market, right? It is a $3 trillion global market. People don't realize that. Only 8% of that
Sports betting
globally is a $3 trillion market, and only about 8% of that is actually regulated. So there is a massive opportunity out there for the traditional players, for the fantasy players, and now for the peer-to-peer exchanges that are starting to launch.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Matt, do you sports bet?
I play fantasy sports, but I don't. I guess that's a version of sports betting.
Right? Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, it's getting pretty innovative as well, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So coming to your day, night, weekend activity, how is that? How are you bringing that into from a sports perspective? Like, as you say, surfing and everything else. Like,
yeah, I mean, I think for us, the camera has been such the big central figure.
I can buy it now, right?
You can buy it now.
Yeah.
You can actually buy it tomorrow in Korea. So
That's
we'll launch
awesome.
in region tomorrow. Camera's been the central focus. We talk about surfing, and we do a lot of work with the WSL and pro surfers. But, there's two sides. If there's the creativity, we all see this amazing content that hits our feeds, at least my feeds for surfing. But they're holding phones in their mouths. They're holding phones on their heads to capture this content. There's no better way to capture a moment that you're living when you're actually wearing the technology on your wrist. You're able to do two things: capture it instantaneously without having to dig around for it, and also live that moment in the same time. But how do we see that we're actually helping a sport like surfing and the ongoing list of other sports? The water is a very dangerous place to compete, especially if you're a professional big wave surfer or longboarder. So we focus on first the creativity, because that's the exciting part, but then it's also safety in water, with positioning in water and rescue capabilities and tying it to hub systems that allow safety teams to go out and zip it and capture these surfers. So we see it from the safety side in surfing, and see it from a training side in basketball or football, where more and more athletes have adopted the Apple Watch platform for body measurement and mechanics, but it was always missing the optical sensor. So we've spent a great deal of time looking at different modalities that fit the different sports respectively, to give them more tools in the field. Phones are great. There's no better sensors than my iPhone 14, but you're not wearing it.
Yeah. And so just leaving sports for a second,
Sure.
Where do you start? What's the key segment that you think is the key segment for that, for starters?
Anyone with an Apple Watch is my key segment.
Yeah.
Yeah. But and again, I think it's down to modality. So when we launched it, and in the early 2010s, we pioneered video messaging on phones, asynchronous, because if you're dispersed around the world and you're in different time zones, it's not always efficient to just connect on a conference call or a FaceTime call, which is really how the whole platform was birthed for us, where we had families that were displaced everywhere, and we were able to stay connected by sending video messages back and forth, which are a lot more personal. So the first modality we brought was around creativity, access to the camera, never missed a moment, and stay in the moment. Second modality was communication, the Dick Tracy, Inspector Gadget, stuff of our imagination and childhood dreams, which we released earlier this summer. But the real one, I think, is the utilitarian side of it, is personal safety. So when we think about personal safety, especially with everything that's going on around us, I'm from the US, and it's been a very strange experience, over the last couple of years. But I'm a father of a 13-year-old daughter who's out in the world, and personal safety is a real thing for us. So you know, when we bring in that piece of it, that creates the ultimate utility, and that opens it up to all the Apple Watch owners.
Awesome. Okay, we're going to come back to that in a second. So we're going to come back to back to sports. So, Alex, how do athletes, you know, with what you guys are doing, and just to athletes in general, with everything that's coming on from sports, how do they evolve? Do they just get better and faster? And
yeah. So, you know, with Home Court, which is the first app I talked about earlier, our kind of AI basketball training application, the whole thesis was that actually this technology was available, but it only available in basically state-of-the-art kind of training facilities, right? So if you go to the Warriors training facility, they have cameras set up all over, you know, the court, on top of the hoops, all that stuff that can track pretty much everything, right? Obviously, those things are very, very expensive. But you know, I think our breakthrough was when the iPhone XS came around. They started to put MPU in your mobile device, which allowed us to process video in real time to give you a lot of the same analytics and information that you would get on these really, really expensive camera systems. And that's always been the beauty of technology, right? You can democratize technology and bring it to the masses. That's kind of was always our point of view. And if you do that, that means, you know, kids who have these technologies today, they can start to use that information much, much earlier than, you know, oh, I have to make it to like a really sophisticated or pay a lot of money to be an expensive trainer or facility to get that type of data. Now everybody can get it. So we certainly feel on the kind of traditional sports side, that's going to continue to happen. There's other applications out there that are starting to do that as well. Swing Vision is another application that uses computer vision for tennis, for example. And we think that's just going to become more and more popular. Those technologies are going to be more and more accessible. And so we're really excited about you know, leading the charge on that, so to speak. But the other thing about sports is that what we're really starting to think about it now is really expanding the definition beyond traditional sports, right? So when we think about sports today, and this is certainly for me, basketball, football, soccer, surfing, et cetera, right? So kind of the classic sports that we all think about. One of the things that we learned during the pandemic was that a lot of people wanted physical activity that wasn't necessarily defined by a sport. And so what happened for us and why we started to go into motion entertainment and gaming was that during the pandemic, our basketball app, which is only in English at the time, was downloaded millions of times all over the world in non-basketball countries. So Thailand, we were the #1 app in Thailand for a few months, which, you know, we had no reason for that to happen, right? They don't play basketball there. They certainly don't speak English as their first language. And so I remember, you know, picking up the phone and calling the engineers, like, hey, is like our data dashboard right? Like, we're seeing like 100,000 users download Home Court in Thailand. And they're like, no, like everything seems right. And so I started searching on social media. I couldn't read anything. So I couldn't read anything that mentioned us, but you could see Home Court being mentioned in Thai. And so I called my cousins who actually live in Thailand. They're like, oh yeah, your app is blowing up. These Olympians started to download it to use it for like, you know, AR training and physical activities, and they were challenging their communities with it. And so the community really pulled from us kind of a use case that we didn't even think about, which was like, hey, we actually want to participate in virtual physical play, kind of like esports, but physical, which is something that's not as intimidating as learning a sport, picking up a baseball bat, which is like, you know, certain type of skill, less accessible. And so somehow we stumbled upon this use case, and now we really believe like, hey, we can expand the definition of sports to be, you know, physical, social, but also virtual. And what does that mean and what does that look like? So we're early on that journey. But it kind of reminds me a lot about, you know, back in the day with Kinect or Wii Sports or Nintendo Sports, where these were like not really sports, but they were sports adjacent or sports inspired. But the things that they had in common with a traditional sport is that it brings a lot of joy, physical activity. It's something you can pick up and play with your friends almost any time. But without the same barrier of entry, as popular as traditional sports is, there's still like a pretty big barrier of entry, right? There's like hand-eye coordination, all this other stuff. And so can we lower that barrier of entry even more and make sports just something that everybody does, but beyond this traditional definition of it. So we're really excited about that.
And do you guys work, you know, there's, what's the what's the one in high school that's blowing up?
Active Arcade?
No, there's a high school sort of organization.
Oh, Overtime.
Overtime.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's like changing things at high school level as well, right?
Absolutely.
So, and how do you work with organizations like that?
Yeah, so the cool thing about our tech is that because again it's accessible on a device that everybody has, right? And so we're building on top of what folks have built at the time. It's pretty crazy because we've been around. Home court's been around for 5 years now, and we've seen kids who've been using us from day one. They're continuing to use it, and then now they're in college. They're using it, and now they're maybe they're in overtime, or we even had and even NBA athletes are using it. So they're all using the same, just like you have a phone. You're going all the way up. So again, that technology is just with you the whole time. And the different ways that for example, an NBA team might be using it to keep track of their players' shots while they're not necessarily in the facility when they're off season. But a lot of younger athletes are using it as a way to differentiate themselves in the recruiting process. So it's not just about your game footage or your video films. Like, no, I have real data about how I've improved in these different skills, whether it's a three-pointer or free throw, over time. And if you talk to a coach, that's really what they're looking for, right? It's not just the talent and your highlight reel. It's like, hey, do you have the right attitude and the work ethic to improve as much, in every aspect of the game as much as possible? Because the competition is just so high. You might have the talent, but do you have the right work ethic and attitude to say, hey, I'm gonna make 100 free throws every day. And not only am I telling you that, coach, I'm actually gonna show you that. And that makes a huge difference. And certainly on the margins, hey, which kid am I gonna choose? The kid who's like, hey, 6 a.m. every morning, I can see that. Every morning he's putting up shots. And he's been improving his game over time versus a kid who just seems to have a flashy highlight reel. It's a huge difference.
I was watching that with my niece who got to top 5 in Australia tennis when she was 16, and just the hard effort that she had to put in day and night. Right. But it was still old school, right? And so there's still and she was in Spain and doing academy in Spain, but it's still quite old school. I just think there's so much more that you could do there in terms of tech. And coming to, so where do you guys see, obviously you've got so much video coming in, do you guys then go into the analytics of it and, how you can enhance people and that kind of stuff? Same thing?
Yeah, I think the advancement in the watch platform, since that's one we're heavily involved in, has been dramatic from the original Apple Watch 7 years ago.
Do you carry an iPhone now?
I do.
But you still do? Do you think we would not have to in the future?
For the basics of what the needs are in the everyday, I don't think you need a phone, but the phone has become our pocket computer.
Yeah.
So I think it ties down to modalities. Always for me, it's how am I utilizing something. Yeah. If I'm trying to, with the latest Apple Watch, the Ultra, the biggest challenge on Apple Watch before was fuel and battery life. Now the Ultra has leveled it up. It's close to a 2.5-day battery.
I do love the Ultra.
It's a much bigger screen, so you can get more done. There's more accessibility built in. But I think to answer your question, we're able to tap into machine learning and pull out so much intelligence, not only from what's available on watch, but what's available in our product, which is just an accessory for the watch.
Yeah, because you guys can pull out an enormous amount of stuff. And so, and coming back to the safety side of things, and again, sports, etc. But I guess as well, is there an ability for you guys to, you can do with the Amazon cameras and the home cameras and everything, alerts and things like that?
Yeah, and again, it's not a modality. I'm talking about it early here today, where I haven't officially released the feature to the world. But for me, Wristcam is merely a tool for people to use. The behavior is the first obstacle, if you will, getting adoption around the behavior, getting acceptance in the public with the behavior in a wearable camera, looking at the history of other folks that have been in the space.
Have you got an API so that you can see people starting to build on it and using it?
Well, yeah, we for a while we were a closed environment. We opened up the SDK to developers, for app makers to tap into our sensors and further out their app experiences. The watch just got their own native app store couple years ago. Didn't really put much energy into it, but has now started to open up accessibility to more app developers, which opens up more. You look at the big developers on phone. I mean, there's over 30 million developers on developing for iPhone, and it was an $85 billion BU for Apple last year alone, which is kind of small.
Yeah. So
But
still early days, but yeah.
But it's what we're able to do now, and what Apple's been able to bring to the watch. And I'm a poster child as a developer for the Apple ecosystem. It's groundbreaking, and the stuff that we're working on with them takes it to that next level as well.
Excellent. Thanks, man. So Mitch, back to you, man. So so where do you what type of innovations are you guys thinking of? I mean, especially from a community perspective, like how do you really build the community engaged like FanDuel and everything have done so well?
Yeah, so when we set out building Bloksports, we had two priorities in mind. One was to ensure that the onboarding experience for non-crypto users, right? If you've never owned a cryptocurrency before, you should be able to onboard instantly. We had to make it super simple. I know the prior session talked a little bit about some of the innovation that's happened more recently that enables that. So user signs up, we set up their own digital wallet for them, right? It's non-custodial to us, it's their custodial wallet. We've integrated fiat on-ramps, right? Off-ramps are coming soon. User does not need to understand what a gas fee is. We cover that in the background for them as well. The only concept that they need to get their head around is that they need a digital casino chip called USDC stablecoin. That's the only token that we're supporting right now because we're rendering all of the information in dollars currently. I heard that there's a USDC coming out that's going to be pegged to the euro, which would be open up a bigger opportunity for us. So we wanted to make this really bring the Web 2 experience into a Web 3 environment. That was priority number one. The second priority, to your point about community, is really integrating a social networking component, right? It's about betting your friends, right? You're not going to bet your friend $10,000, but you're going to bet him $20, right? So we are heavily focused on building community, integrating social networking, integrating content more deeply into the experience, and also making this readily accessible for the casual sports fan, not just the hardcore sports bettor. So we had to rethink the entire user journey around sports betting, right? So those are the two things that we focus on. We think we've done a good job. I'm sure there's going to be plenty more, iteration going forward and soon, and a lot of learning, right? We'll take that feedback and use it to innovate and improve the product.
I have a Web3 crypto question for you. Do you think that USDC is still the main stablecoin for the next year, or do you think Binance CZ has a mission to try and change that?
Yeah, so I mean USDC isn't the largest in terms of volume. It's still Tether, right? But I think we all saw what happened with Terra, and now the near stablecoin. We wanted to avoid that situation altogether. We also wanted to avoid the volatility associated with the general crypto market, and we decided to only support USDC out of the gate because it is a fully collateralized, audited stablecoin, and it's an organization. The parent organization Circle is actually looking to become a regulated financial institution in the U.S. So we wanted to introduce a currency in our system that was secure, protects our user base, and insulates us from the general volatility in the crypto markets.
Yeah. Very good. How long have we got, by the way? 30 minutes more? Yeah. Wow. Okay. Right, okay.
What do we talk about now?
Okay. We're going to talk about a lot of things. Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. Okay. Right. Well, thank you for staying for another 30 minutes more. That's great, guys. We're going to stop for one quick second because I've got tons of questions for you guys, but we'll stop for a sec. Have you guys got any questions? Any sports-related questions for us before we kick off? No? Okay, all right. Well, we'll kick into. Oh, we do. T. Yes. Ah, yes. Do you want to kick that one off? Sure. Yeah.
So for us, we introduced a few things similarly, not necessarily on the blockchain, on that thesis though. So for example, on home court, you can redeem basically something similar to like move points for like digital Nike shoes and stuff like that, but they're not NFTs or anything like that. I think the main reason is for us, our audience is much younger. And so we just have to be careful with introducing stuff like that, though at the same time, I think those gamification dynamics are still very prevalent. But I do think, and I think the last panel talked about this too, and I think it's the same thing for any kind of general consumer audience. And I love, Mitch, what you said about bringing Web 2 interfaces to Web 3. I think that's going to be really important because the reality is it's so complicated. Like, I'm not saying I'm the most sophisticated person, I dabble, but like it is just crazy how much work it takes to like just even get started. And even today, we have users who write us negative reviews, not because they don't like the app, but because they're like, wait, I have to pay for a subscription, but I don't have a credit card. Why won't you let me just use the app, right? Like it's something as simple as that, right? So there's even already friction in the current kind of fiat way for our users. And so we introduced something more. That's crazy. Now, at the same time, Roblox seems to have solved this. So I was like, wow, okay, we have some work to do. But I do think getting to a place where the average consumer and user makes it's just so, like, the on-ramp is so easy, understood, just like in the game, that they don't have to go through. And yeah, the risk of it is becomes more frictionless as well. I think that's going to be really the key. I know there are a lot of folks trying to solve that today, so we're really excited about it. But certainly for us, like our demographic tends to skew pretty relatively younger, so it's not something we can introduce easily at the moment.
It's a great question, T. Thank you. And clearly, full marks for listening to the last panel as well. So, Mitch, going to that question as well, like tokenization and rewards for your users, which are going to skew older, I guess.
Yeah,
should do.
Absolutely. So a token is on our roadmap. The last thing the world needs today is like another shitcoin, right? So we're focused on building a sound fundamental business first, right? And then focusing on the token later. And obviously when we do issue a token, it has to have real utility, relevancy, and liquidity. But again, that's backburnered until we build out our ecosystem and our business. But in terms of the rewards, we are partnering with other token providers today to provide incentives for users on our platform for doing different activities. We're introducing NFTs as rewards and gamification as well through our platform. So there are ways to get around it without us issuing our own token.
So, and where do you think tokens in general are going to go? Like, because there are, as you say,
yeah, I mean,
abundance of them.
There's an abundance, and I was there as everyone was in 2016, 17 with all of these thousands of ICOs that were happening, right? It was always token first without a clear-cut business model in a lot of cases. Definitely want to avoid that. In the case of Sweatcoin, they've done a brilliant job because they're tapping into a couple of sort of fundamental things, which is aspiration to be healthy, right, and a profit motivation. So, to the extent that we can hit on things like that are innate to provide a sustainable model for our token, that's going to be key. That's going to be critical. And again, to be quite honest, it's early days for us right now. We have a plan to get there, but again, unless it has real utility, I don't have much confidence for the vast majority of the tokens out there.
Yeah, definitely very, very sensible. So coming back to, is there a, like, has you build community around what you do? Like, how do you do that? Like, how do you engage people to get excited about the opportunities and everything?
I mean, it's different generation by generation. So my 13-year-old daughter is addicted to snap maps. That generation is quite connected to one another. So giving them something to stay even more connected in each other's lives is giving them a piece of candy. But yeah, we've had to, when we first launched, we had a fairly large buyer group when we first announced this thing years ago. Building that behavioral adoption was huge for us. We talked about how do we incentivize. So we created a velvet rope around a number of different elements to get people to get access to it through utilization of the product itself. But it, really our focus and my mission is redefining what the personal camera means. And then once you build that adoption, we become the access point to everything, especially when you tie optics into it. So the watch has become your wallet, your payment system, your access, your keys, your wallet, your security, your notification center. But the only thing it was missing was this major piece of the eyeball. But I've seen rapid adoption with Gen Z on the product, and millennials as well. Gen Z are getting onboarded to these types of devices a lot more rapidly than we were as young kids. Apple, for this product, Apple even builds an entry point product with their SE watch, which was intentional to get those earlier buyers on, which they know would then graduate to the iPhone and then be lifelong customers of their product. But Gen Z is their own, and I'm not trying to offend anybody who's Gen Z in here, but they march to a different drum, a different beat altogether. And they live in a very open and accessible world where privacy is a lot more important for myself. I don't know, I'm Gen X, I guess. But there is no privacy as you move down the age spectrum. Everything is out in the open, instantaneously. But it's not always about the negativity. It's just about anything. I don't know anybody here who has teenage or preteen children here. They probably know exactly what I'm talking about. But it's bringing people closer together. And so that's really easy to do on the mission itself, but we've had to incentivize our users as well along the way.
Well, I'd say, so T has a company called 𝐒𝐩𝐨𝐬, and your lead marketing is Gen Z, and our lead marketing is Gen Z as well. Like, we literally, and it is a very different approach to the way they're putting it out there. It actually kind of reminds me of you back in the early Facebook days. Exactly the same, when you were like disturbing everyone in Facebook and trying to do things differently. So where do you guys take next in 2023, 24?
Yeah, so we're excited about basically, today camera-enabled devices, as you know, are everywhere. Clearly on watches now, which is really cool. But it's interesting. It's one of the things we're starting to see in 2023 and 2024. And Samsung invested in our Series B, and we're starting to see camera-enabled experiences coming to the living room, TV platforms. So whether that's natively in a television or in a set-top box experience. And there's been a few examples of this. I think Meta released something called Portal TV a few years ago. I have one, I love it. But obviously the main use case so far has been primarily video conferencing. Other use cases, modalities as you like to say, are watching sport, watching TV programs, sports together live, even if you're not in the same place. Fitness is a pretty popular one. I think Peloton released like a Peloton guide that uses AI to kind of track your reps and your form. And we think that platform, this camera-enabled smart TV platform, is going to be really fun and exciting, because for our content, for a lot of the games that we're making, that is like the best place for it to be. The bigger screen, the better. I've been able to play some of our games on screens like this, and it's been really cool. And before, the Kinect was probably one of the early examples of that. And that was almost a decade ago now. And it was so ahead of its time. It actually did, despite it kind of sunsetting, it actually did really, really well for a really long time. But today, you see these motion experiences still live, right? Obviously, Oculus is an amazing example of that already. Beat Saber is like the #1 title on it. It actually has an attach rate of almost 1-to-1. So if you have your Oculus, you almost are guaranteed to buy Beat Saber as one of the first experiences you get. But other ones that are maybe not as like in the media as much, but the Nintendo Switch Ring Fit is like $100 million a year game. Just Dance is another one. But all those experiences, just like some of the other technologies before, they require you to have certain types of devices, right? And so we're saying, hey, the next generation is going to be much cheaper technology. All you need is a single camera, and you let AI basically take care of the rest of it. And we can create very similar VR-like experiences on big screens, but also allow people to play these experiences or experience these experiences together, no matter what device they have. So whether you're on a VR device, whether you're playing on your phone or your PC, as long as you're on a camera-enabled device with a decent enough processing, you should be able to have all the experiences to play together using your body essentially as a game controller, which just enables more physical, sports-like activity. And there's something about the physical nature of activity that creates an immersion as well. So that's one of the things that in VR that's really fun if you haven't tried it yet. Part of the immersion is like all your senses are involved. It's not just like your eyesight, but like you're moving your body. Like it really feels like you're in the environment, and we believe we can democratize that as well. And it's not competitive. We believe it's very complementary because just like the internet, I access the internet on multiple devices today, whether it's my watch, my phone, my TV, or my laptop. And we believe that that's just going to continue. And VR is going to be one of those things, but they should all be able to interact with one another. And the one thing that they all are going to have in common eventually is going to be the camera. And we think that's a really fundamental kind of enablement for a lot of computer vision experiences in the future.
So the future is the camera. We've got two of us sitting here.
Future is the camera, absolutely. I mean, and
yes, you're pretty ubiquitous if you think about it. Right?
Absolutely, and it's crazy. I mean, and I think here in Asia there isn't really as yet as big an understanding of just how huge the market is in the US in sports, right? And just sports digitization, sports tech. Obviously sports betting, but sports betting is not as prevalent out here. But still, it's just huge, and it's only going to grow. Any questions, guys? Any more sports questions? Any more Web3 questions? Any questions about anything? Right. Okay. Well, very good. Okay. We've got 10 more minutes, I think, before we wrap up. Yeah. Yeah.
Steve who?
What? Who, me? That's a very random question. I'm sorry, man. No, that's the first. Yeah, but thanks. I got to go check him out. I have no idea.
Take it as a compliment.
Yeah. Oh, you mean the movie Avatar?
Yeah, not
All right.
The human.
Ah, okay. Interesting. Okay. Well, he's Australian.
His
I
alter
didn't know
ego,
that.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for that very random question, but I appreciate it. So coming back off Avatar for a second. So back to
Use a lot of cameras to make that movie.
Use
Yeah,
a lot
they
of
do a lot of
cameras.
yes.
There's a lot of
Make the
cameras.
connection. There you go.
There's a very lot of cameras. They invented a whole new range of cameras for that, as did James Cameron. Right, before we digress too far on Avatar, back to Mitch. What other sports do you see are going to be hot from a sports betting perspective outside of the traditional stuff? And actually, I've got a really interesting question for you. actually, just remind me. So, and this is actually for all three of you guys. So one of the things that a lot of the athletes these days have is huge pressure on them from a social media perspective, but from betting, right? So a lot of the tennis stars who never had any issue beforehand now have, like, if they lose a game, they get horrible social media vitriol because they lost a game, and they're finding it very difficult to deal with that. Like, how do you think that, like, that comes back on the sports betting organizations a little bit? I think there is going to be a backlash. Like, how do you think that could possibly, because the effect on the athletes is huge, I think.
Yeah, so tennis is a great
especially individual sports.
Yeah, it's a great example. It happens to be one of the most wagered on sports out there, and a lot of it has to do with the in-match betting as well. I mean, you could literally bet on every single point. And interestingly, tennis is also like one of the most corrupt areas. I don't want to call out any specific geography or region, but but
just in general, it gets hit all the time. With
yeah, I mean, at a certain level, there have been so many cases where the players are throwing points because in certain markets you can make more money by throwing a match than actually purse money by winning the event. So it is a problem in certain sports. Obviously, the major sports, there are so many controls in place that it's very, very rare. What's nice about our platform is, in terms of the sports that are going to become, more and more popular from a betting standpoint, for us, we don't really care. Our platform allows users to create their own bets. They can set their own lines and odds, right? So anything, I know there's an age restriction, thing here, but if
kids bet. It doesn't have to be money.
Exactly.
They bet other things.
If you and I wanted to wager on how many free throws, we're each going to make, we can do that. So for us, we're embracing emerging sports, obviously all the mature sports. We're also geographically agnostic. We want to cover sports from all over the world, and that's our goal. Hopefully that answers your
I think
question.
so, but I think it's still like the impact on the athletes themselves. Like, it is huge, and it's tough. I mean, it's not really your responsibility, but it is a huge impact. And there was one, one Australian leading tennis player the other day who just said, like, it's just changed our lives. Like, in the last 2 years, it's so much more difficult for us because we didn't have that beforehand. And I think, Alex, you wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, this has nothing to do with the company, but I think it's such a double-edged sword, right? Especially as a high-profile influencer. Like, there's so much the platform, so much good you can do with the platform, right? And you certainly see in the NBA, for example, a lot of athletes using that for social justice causes. Certainly, trying to bring Brittany Griner back from Russia, like, using the platform way, and certainly from their point of view, just causes, right? The flip side of that is, like, and I don't think this is exclusive to athletes. I think it's just like, everything you say can be torn apart, misinterpreted. How do you behave? Like, it's almost like at some point you just see a lot of athletes, like, and I've known a few, who just be like, I'm off. Like, I'm not even gonna engage in it. It's just not, and I totally get it. Because it's almost easier just to do that, right? Just sort of like, it's just not worth the effort. And so I think it's, it's a tough balance. I don't know if, like, it feels like it's a cultural thing, and I think betting, for example, is obviously, like, it creates an easy way for people to, like, kind of, say things when in the heat of the moment.
Because they feel invested.
Yeah,
In
very
the
invested. Yeah, exactly.
Totally, right?
Like, as a consumer, you're, like, so much more engaged.
The kid's only 18. Like, I mean,
I don't know. It's a really interesting conversation.
So you wanted to say something. think I absolutely, and I'll just add to that. Like, how do you guys yourselves like are going to be, because it is going to get more active. Like, how do you think your companies are going to be responding to things like 𝐒𝐻𝐬, you know, when he turns up? Because you are going to be having people like that and like sponsoring, working with you.
At risk of saying something, I don't know. I think it's very hard. You know, I think one of the things we try to do is like, if we don't feel educated on a topic, it seems almost like this is not like first take on ESPN, right? Like, it's like if I don't, how do I comment on that without knowing, like being educated on it? I think that's like a very relatively simple thing. Is like until I dig deep into the topic, and then obviously you risk showing people like, oh, it means you don't care. You know, I think that's a pretty high bar. It's like there's a difference between I don't know enough to like have an opinion or take a side, versus like I don't care.
Well,
right? Yeah, I think
it's a really interesting question. So Mitch, so you're going to work with an influencer. Would you?
I see what you mean.
Yeah. So would you say, hey, there are certain influencers I'm not going to work with here, no matter how big they are or how important they are?
Yeah, I mean, we currently
view as well, Matt.
Yeah, we currently have actually athletes that are former professional athletes, one of whom is on the Fireside Chat tomorrow, that are advisors, investors, working with us from a marketing standpoint. We have to be very, very careful on who we utilize. But to your point, you can't really. It's hard to plan for something like that, right? You have to be reactive, and you have to take a stand when something, an incident like the 𝐒𝐻𝐬 thing, happens. But absolutely, it's something that we won't tolerate as a company in terms of the athletes and celebrities that we're working with endorsing our product. But we're just going to have to be reactive as we go along.
It's tricky, isn't it, Matt? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I say no. I think I'm known around the States as the guy who says no to everything. And everything else is no comment. I mean, look, our company mission is building products that advance humanity, both in software and hardware. So our at the core is for the betterment of people. It's not been all that fun trying to bring the lights up on a brand in the consumer ecosystem in the US. It's an impossible adventure, and if you're an individual athlete without a team, I can only imagine.
Yeah.
So I think for us, and as I speak on behalf of my company, we don't lend our voice to a lot.
No.
And I think to what Alex was saying is because I'm not educated about it. So if it's talking to something that we've taken an official position on, but the obvious things are pretty obvious.
Yeah.
If it doesn't speak well to humanity, I don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
If it's put in place to bring a benefit, then I want everything to do with it.
It's very interesting how long it took Adidas to finally do something about 𝐒𝐻𝐬. What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, it's really echo. It's we got to do the best we can, right? Like you kind of you find partners, investors who you align their values, right? And you kind of you generally kind of figure that out. Now, if those things change, you gotta you respond at the same time, right? But like I think everybody just tries to do the best they can. They evaluate kind of relationships, and this is just true for everything, right? You evaluate relationships based off of the information you have available to you, and the history and with the learnings you've had, and you just try to apply that. And sometimes sometimes things happen, and it turns out you were wrong, and and then you just gotta own that, and hopefully that helps you learn for the next time and gives you more some muscle memory. So the next time you kind of see that pattern, you're like, oh, maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I should recognize it. But I think but you have to have that growth mindset that says, hey, if you try to just like everything's guaranteed, there's no risk, we can't do anything, right?
But the growth mindset, it's also avoiding the gray area of things. Growth mindset is, I'm going to find my way through. I'm not going to run into that wall. I'm going to manufacture at times what I need to manufacture. But I actually think it's black and white. And you've got to hold a firm position and not deviate from that if you want to have a reputation that is profound and accepted by everybody else out there. Look, I'm building the most personal camera, so unless I am taking input and feedback from people, then how am I gonna, I'm one person, how am I gonna think about how person A is gonna use it versus person B, unless we're working with those people. So it's a pretty straight path. I think it's a lot easier when we've all sort of been there and been building things for a long time, or worked at companies that there were far too many gray areas, and so we knew exactly how we would proceed when we were building our own things. But it's also easy to identify the things that are just not proper out there.
Well, that was an excellent question. It certainly sparked a great conversation, which is so relevant in the sports sector right now, which is just the interactions with influencers and celebrities in general. Anyone else with a final question before we wrap it up?
I'll give a free Wristcam out for the next question.
Yeah, come on. Like, seriously, did you hear that? Like, can someone please ask that? And are you kidding me? All right, there we go.
Sure.
Great question.
Yeah, we got to do it.
You want to turn off your Wi-Fi? Which one do you want to see? The camera? We'll do the exciting part. I mean, the video calling is the exciting part. So, in a bad cell range, we'll see how it comes up here. It's going to have stage fright too, guaranteed. Any luck, Pete? Okay. Took a second because of the poor quality there. So Pete's on his iPhone there. This works cross-device, allowing you to connect from anywhere in the world, from whether you're on your Apple Watch or your iPhone. You're not usually in the same room with another, so you can hear the delay in audio. But there's your Inspector Gadget feature in real time there. Now this is video calling on a watch where there's no actual FaceTime video support. So we invented the protocols to even stream the video on the watch. The
Very
video.
cool.
Thanks,
Well done,
Pete.
guys. Give them
Nice
a
finish.
round of applause for that. That's a huge amount of work that has gone into making that work. That is
And
not
I will send you a Wristcam.
That is not easy.
Ask me
At
a
all.
question.
Yeah. Yeah, so well done. Congratulations. And it was the right question, too.
Impromptu
Just a
demos are
demo.
hard.
Perfect.
Impromptu demos are very hard.
Look, it wasn't a failed demo, so we're
It
perfect.
worked out
There
well.
you go.
It worked out well. So anyway, thanks very much, guys. Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Mitch. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Frank.
Thank you.
Thank you very
everybody.
much for asking those questions. Congratulations to our winner of the wristwatch of the day. And thank you, T, for those insightful social questions. Very cool. So thank you very much, guys. Appreciate
Thank you, everybody.
it. Okay.
Thank you, everyone.